On Saturday, June 15, 2019, three men are fishing at Lake Saint-Aubin in eastern France. The lake sits just outside the village, between low hills, reed beds, and narrow gravel paths along the bank. It is not a tourist spot. It is a local fishing water where the same faces return every weekend. Thomas Berger, 38 years old, has been coming there for years, usually with his two close friends, Rémi Charpentier and Julien Masson. They often fish on the north bank, where a few wooden jetties and old concrete fishing spots sit between the reeds. That morning, the three men arrive separately, each with his own car and basic equipment. Near the village, they rent a small storage unit together for larger gear: coolers, chairs, lamps, nets, bait supplies, spare rods, and night fishing equipment. To other fishermen, it looks like an ordinary day. The three men are in the same area, not always sitting next to each other, but close enough to talk, drink coffee, and exchange equipment. Later that evening, Claire Roussel, Thomas's girlfriend, notices that he still has not come home. His phone is switched off. Her messages go unanswered. At first, it seems possible that he has stayed somewhere, visited someone, or simply does not want to be reached. But when relatives drive to the lake, Thomas's car is still in the parking area near the north bank. There is no trace of Thomas himself. The next morning, Thomas is officially reported missing. Police begin with the people who may have seen him at the lake that Saturday. Rémi and Julien are interviewed first. They say Thomas seemed irritated toward the end of the afternoon and started packing his things. According to them, there was no serious argument, just some tension, the kind that sometimes happened when a long day of fishing had produced little. Because Thomas's car is still in the parking area, that explanation remains incomplete. Maybe he returned to the water later. Maybe he left with someone else. Maybe someone saw him after his friends had gone. One name quickly comes up: Alain Vautier, an older regular fisherman at the lake. He had long-running conflicts with Thomas and his friends over fishing spots, night fishing, rules, and bait. A week earlier, Alain and Thomas had argued openly near a jetty on the north bank. Alain does not help himself. He is short, defensive, and admits that he did not like Thomas. His van, fishing gear, and home are checked. Nothing is found that explains Thomas's disappearance. Still, Alain remains in the picture. He knew the lake, he was there that day, and he had a visible conflict with the missing man. Police then look at Thomas's private life. Claire Roussel says their relationship had been difficult for months. Thomas was often away, spent a lot of money on fishing, and seemed to spend more time at the lake than at home. A message from the night before his disappearance receives close attention. Thomas had written that he was going to talk to them tomorrow, and that after that, it had to be finished. Claire says she did not know exactly who he meant. It could have been Rémi and Julien. It could have been people from the fishing club. It could also have been about money, because Thomas had complained more than once about shared costs and equipment. At first, Claire does not tell everything about their final arguments. She does not want Thomas to be seen as someone who would simply walk away, but her hesitation makes the first days of the investigation more confusing. Her phone records and alibi make her involvement less likely. Still, her statement remains important. Thomas had clearly wanted to settle something that Saturday, but nobody yet knows with whom. Almost 4 weeks later, another fisherman gets his line stuck near an old jetty on the north bank. When he tries to free it, he pulls a heavy, partly loosened net bundle from the water. At first, he thinks it is dumped fish waste, spoiled bait material, or slaughterhouse remains. The bundle is weighted, wrapped in old netting, and partly caught between reeds and branches. Because the contents seem unusual and feel abnormally heavy, the police are called. The bundle is examined. In the laboratory, the case changes completely. Part of the contents is found to be human. DNA confirms that the remains belong to Thomas. From that moment, the investigation is no longer only about where Thomas went. The question becomes who had access to remote areas of the lake, who worked with heavy fishing material, and who could believe that something underwater might remain unnoticed for a long time. Alain Vautier comes sharply back into focus. He knows the old jetty, often fishes alone, and had argued with Thomas shortly before the disappearance. For many people in the village, the direction now seems clearer than ever. The bundle makes Alain look suspicious, but it also begins to exclude him. The netting, the weights, and the way it is packed do not match his equipment. His timeline is confirmed by surveillance footage from a shop outside the village. No trace of Thomas is found in his van, home, or fishing gear. Police then look at the storage units near the village. The manager, Marc Lenoir, first says that nobody could enter after closing time. Later, he admits that regular users were sometimes allowed access without it being properly recorded. That briefly makes him important. He had keys, knew the fishermen, and knew who used which unit. But there is no evidence that he saw Thomas after the fishing day. Attention shifts to the storage unit that Thomas, Remy, and Julien rented together. Several coolers are missing. An old keep net is gone. Under a workbench, there are signs of cleaning. Diluted blood is found in a drain. Forensic testing links it to Thomas. DNA traces from Thomas are also found on remaining equipment, in places where Remy and Julien said only fishing gear had been stored. It also becomes clear that after the disappearance, they moved items from the unit, something they had not mentioned before. Until then, they had mainly been the last friends to see Thomas. Now their story no longer fits the evidence. The reconstruction begins with the conversation Thomas wanted to have that Saturday. He wanted to leave the fixed fishing group. He wanted to take back his equipment, stop sharing the storage unit, and stop paying for gear that, in his view, was mostly being used by others. For Thomas, it was a practical decision. For Remy, it was different. He often decided where they fished, what they bought, and how the storage unit was used. Julien usually stood between them, but more often followed Remy than Thomas. On the North Bank, the conversation gets out of hand. The first physical action is never established with certainty. The court later accepts that there was a shove or a blow, followed by a fall against a concrete edge or metal post. Thomas is seriously injured and dies shortly afterwards. Remy and Julien do not call for help. They take Thomas to the storage unit. From that moment, it is no longer only about one fatal outburst, but about the choices made afterwards. They choose the lake because it is their territory. They know the old jetties, the deeper sections, the quiet hours, and the places where almost nobody goes. They do not think they can make everything disappear in one night. They count on water, mud, animals, predatory fish, decomposition, and time. In their minds, remains underwater will be damaged, eaten, scattered, and harder to identify. Part of Thomas is left in weighted net bundles in the water. Another part remains temporarily in the storage unit because they do not dare or cannot manage to move everything at once. They keep returning to the same lake after the disappearance because staying away would look suspicious. They sit again on the bank with the same equipment, knowing what is still in the water and what has not yet disappeared from the storage unit. A month later, one bundle comes loose near the old jetty. From that moment, the lake no longer works in their favor. It leads the investigation back to the storage unit. Remy Charpentier and Julien Masson are convicted in 2021 for Thomas's death, for hiding and dismembering his body, and for misleading the investigation. Remy receives the heaviest sentence, life imprisonment with a minimum term of 30 years. The court sees him as the dominant figure in the confrontation and as the one who took the most control after Thomas died. It also weighs against him that he continued speaking with family members and searchers while knowing Thomas would not be found alive. Julien receives 25 years. His exact role in the fatal moment remains less clear, but according to the court, he fully participated in moving, hiding, and disposing of the body. He had several chances to seek help or tell the truth, but did not. Alain Vautier is fully cleared. He had argued with Thomas, cooperated poorly, and made himself look suspicious by his attitude, but the technical evidence excluded him. After the case, he leaves the local fishing club. Marc Lenoir is criticized for the loose access rules at the storage units. He is not prosecuted for Thomas's death, but his statements show how little control there was over who entered outside official hours. Claire Roussel is left with the fact that Thomas's final day began as an ordinary fishing trip with two men he had trusted for years. For weeks, the investigation looked at old conflicts, relationship problems, and the possibility that Thomas had left on his own. In the end, the evidence led back to the place where the day had started, the north bank of Lake Saint-Aubin, the shared storage unit, and the two friends who had claimed he walked away.